A nuclear aircraft carrier is a floating city loaded with jets, fuel, bombs, and atomic reactors deep inside. It seems unsinkable, but history proves one spark can turn this fortress into a catastrophe. When fire erupts at sea, how close have these giants come to losing everything? At 8:18 in the morning, a Zuni rocket under an F-4 Phantom reached its breaking point. Exhaust from a nearby air start unit pushed temperatures past 180 degrees Celsius, hot enough to set off the warhead. The rocket exploded without warning, sending fragments that sliced through tightly packed jets and tearing open a fuel tank. Within seconds, JP-5 jet fuel gushed across the flight deck and ignited in a wave of fire. The blaze encountered more rockets and bombs, each heating rapidly in the inferno. One by one, Mark 82 bombs and missiles began to detonate, each blast tearing fresh holes through the steel deck. Burning fuel poured down into the lower levels, setting new fires below. In less than 1 minute, routine operations had turned into a running firestorm, with explosions ripping through the heart of the ship and chaos spreading faster than anyone could react. Amid the blasts and burning fuel, sailors scrambled across the shattered deck, dragging hoses through pools of fire and twisted metal. With firefighting foam units knocked out, teams improvised, passing gear hand to hand and aiming water at bombs still threatening to explode. Captain Kent Lee ordered the carrier turned into the wind, forcing smoke and flames away from critical areas and giving damage control crews a fighting chance. Below decks, others sealed off compartments, cutting off the fire's path to the nuclear reactors. For 4 hours, the crew battled not just flames, but collapsing decks and the constant threat of new explosions. By the time the last fire was out, 15 aircraft were lost, and holes gaped through the steel deck. Yet the ship stayed afloat, and the reactors remained isolated, saved by the courage and quick thinking of those on the front lines. Night operations off the coast of Florida demand total focus. On May 26, 1981, an EA-6B Prowler, running dangerously low on fuel, lined up for landing on USS Nimitz. The darkness left no margin for error. The Prowler drifted off course, clipped a Sea King helicopter, and then smashed into a cluster of parked jets. Fuel tanks ruptured, burning JP-5 spilled across the deck, and within seconds a wall of fire rose under the glare of emergency lights. Crews rushed toward the flames, dragging hoses and scrambling to cool missiles and bombs that were now baking in the heat. Water jets arced across the deck, soaking ordnance in a desperate attempt to keep warheads below their critical temperature. Every second mattered. Amid the chaos, sailors fought to contain the blaze because even after flames seemed to die down, a heated missile can still cook off and detonate without warning. The night landing had turned the flight deck into a battlefield, and the crew's damage control training proved critical. 28 minutes after the flames on USS Nimitz seemed tamed, the silence was shattered. A Sparrow missile, its warhead heated by the earlier fire, detonated without warning. The blast tore a crater through the flight deck and killed sailors who had just risked everything to save the ship. 3 more missiles exploded in quick succession, sending fragments and shockwaves across the deck. The delayed explosions stunned even seasoned veterans. On a carrier, danger can hide long after the last flame is out. Investigators traced the disaster not only to the crash, but to lapses in discipline and readiness. Toxicology reports revealed drug use among some crew members. The shock from these findings swept through the Navy, fueling the rise of a strict zero-tolerance drug policy. The Nimitz fire became a turning point, reshaping rules, training, and culture across the fleet. A single cigarette, lit where it never should have been, triggered a disaster deep inside USS George Washington. The initial spark caught oil-soaked rags and spilled hydraulic fluid, turning an unmanned compartment into a furnace. The real danger lay in the ship's own design. Powerful ventilation fans meant to keep the massive carrier cool now sucked smoke and flames upward, feeding the fire with fresh oxygen. The blaze climbed through the ship's 9 decks, racing along cableways and ductwork like a chimney in reverse. Flames and choking black smoke spread into nearly 80 compartments, far from the original ignition point. What began as a small hidden fire became a ship-wide threat in minutes, not because of enemy action, but because the carrier's own air systems turned a spark into a rolling inferno. The crew faced a battle that would last through the night, as fire found new pathways at every turn. 12 hours of relentless firefighting tested every limit of the George Washington's crew. Smoke and heat forced sailors to crawl through pitch-black compartments, dragging hoses and breathing from air tanks until their lungs burned. 37 crew members suffered injuries, mostly from smoke inhalation and burns, while exhaustion and confusion led to several close calls. Damage spread across 80 compartments, destroying miles of wiring and burning out key systems. Repairs would take months and cost the Navy $70 million. As investigators traced the fire's path, the blame fell squarely on command. The ship's captain and executive officer were relieved of duty, and several sailors faced discipline. The Navy called the disaster entirely preventable, a harsh lesson in what happens when leadership fails to enforce even the smallest safety rules. Even now, a single mistake aboard a nuclear carrier can threaten hundreds of lives and billions in assets. Vigilance is never optional, because at sea, fire waits for no one.